The Hand of Madness Chapter 1, Requiem Aeternam, by Seth Brand. Fifth installment. The following story contains the depiction of violent scenes and also adult language. Viewer discretion is advised. This is the continuation of Madness serial, The Hand of Madness Chapter 1, Requiem Aeternam, fourth installment.
It was an accident. If you filed charges for me, you wouldn't,
Constantine says with seriousness from the other side of the room. Even the impulsive Achilles yielded indulgently to the old King Priam when he begged for the corpse of his dead son. Your benevolence is no less fascinating to me than Achilles.
A single moment of indulgence from Achilles was more honorable for the memory of his beloved Patroclus than a whole crusade of wrathful butchery. We must forgive as we have been forgiven. Our humanity depends on our ability to see ourselves reflected in our neighbor.
Are you a believer? I question him when I listen to him talking with such compassion. I have tasted a smidgen of religiosity in your argument as the words dropped from your mouth, I say, extending my arm to reach the glass of water in the cabinet next to my bed.
What you've managed to savor is instead a concoction of beliefs,
he elucidates, bringing me the glass and directing the straw inside the glass towards my mouth.
I wouldn't define myself as a religious person. But yes, I'm a believer. I believe in compassion and love, among other things.
You do well, because for a world of infinite possibilities, to define oneself is to limit oneself, I answer him, drinking a small sip of water afterwards. Compassion and religion are often correlated, and so is the sacrifice, which is often related to violence. Ergo, for compassion to exist, there must be violence. Animals were slaughtered violently as sacrifices in ancient times. A portion of these offered to the gods, and the remaining consumed by the participants of the ritual. Man cannot take communion in relishing the sacrificial flesh and blood of religion without the threat of falling into animality. Violence can be the omnipresent driver of our inward good intentions.
Light implies darkness. Violence and compassion are possible and paradoxically the most natural features in mankind. Good and evil coexisting within us. Don't you believe so?
He says, sitting down in my bed, right next to my feet. Good and evil result in a limited Manichaean way of seeing the world, and these are nothing but made-up words. Violence is neither good nor evil. It's in our nature as a means and instinct for survival.
It sounds like you worship violence instead of religion.
He suggests, trying to turn the conversation against me. We are violent by nature. Many gods are usually presented as both benevolent and brutal. But it was man who created the idea of God, wasn't he? The violence the wolf employs to devour the lamb is the same violence the lamb applies to pluck and chew the grass in its path.
Ingesting another living being without all the ritualism of religion or the nourishment purposes is reduced to a mere egotistical act. Humans refrain from eating each other just because we mostly don't need to. However, the treason to our own species is hidden in our inherited cannibal nature, waiting patiently for our politeness suit to fall and our cornucopia to scarce.
I think cannibalism is outrageous even for mankind's distorted ethical standards.
We're but animals well adapted to the ever-expanding artificial habitat we call society. We fake and conceal our true natures under our well-constructed masks and our boundless desire for superiority. We're raised and tamed by the expectations of the world.
Sometimes, alienation and dissociation as pathologies serve to evade us from our painful realities. We continually deny to ourselves. In your case, your morality and compassion seem authentic to me, because although I don't know you, I've got this feeling of knowing you beyond this life.
Maybe we know each other from a past life,
he says, sighing. I hope our memories may overcome and transcend the illusory trap of reality that way, I reply to him while he stays silent and then smiles at me.
Benedict
Commissioner Benedict Shepherd leaves the room following the hurried steps of Dr. Ambrose Crow, who guides him to his office to talk more privately. Benedict knows Ambrose since they were young and both still in college. It was even Ambrose who assisted Margaret, Benedict's wife, to bring Constantine into the world, because he's much more than just a renowned doctor and director of St. Thomas Hospital. He's also a recognized researcher in several branches of genetics. In the clean corridors, they have a sneaky talk by asking each other about their families, but mainly about their wives, who often gather for tea as good friends. Arriving at the office, Ambrose opens the wooden door decorated with a plain and simple rectangular skylight. Then, he invites Benedict to come in first. He enters after him. Before that, though, Ambrose gives a glimpse of the corridor to make sure they wouldn't be interrupted. Closing the door, Ambrose asks for Benedict's cape and beret to hang them on the metallic coat rack located at the entrance, and immediately, full of restlessness, he invites him to sit on one of the two black leather chairs in front of his desk. They both sit down and then, Ambrose, full of curiosity and without wasting time, asks,
"Benedict, what's going on?"
"Do you remember Ulrich?" Benedict asks, getting straight to the point.
"Ulrich? Of course, the deserter who managed to disappear without leaving a trace,"
he says, nodding as remembering a distant time.
"What this has to do with him?"
He immediately adds without being able to figure out what Benedict's talking about. "Well, the man bedlying in the company of my son, we've been tracking him down since a time ago. We believe he is the one whose return we've been waiting for."
"I remember now,"
he says, leaning over the desktop and staying thoughtful.
"Ulrich's last name was Madsen, like this young man's." "It's him,"
he exclaims, standing up euphorically.
"That would explain why there's no information in the records about him, and also, the fact that he survived such a violent accident. It's because that's not his real name." "Do they know he is here?"
"That's right, Ambrose. They know. This has been managed as an internal matter until now. We didn't want to say anything until we were sure. They sent me here to corroborate it, but I need your help to do it."
"Tell me, what do you want me to do?"
he inquires with great zeal. "We had been looking for an opportunity to get a DNA sample from him to corroborate his identity, but now, for the grace of highest, we've been given such an occasion," he says, smiling. "I want you to do a blood test and compare it with this sample," he adds as he takes out a small glass tube from the inner pocket of his jacket, which seems to contain crystallized blood.
"Is that blood from?"
he asks, gently taking the tube from his hand. "Yes. It is," Benedict confirms, interrupting without allowing him to ask the question.
"It's such an honor for me, but I don't know if I'm worthy."
He points, contemplating the glass tube. "All we are worthy. Soon you'll see how we will be rewarded. Make sure to be discreet, neither he nor my son should suspect any of this. I'll inform the great commander immediately. He will be pleased."
"Rest assured. I barely recognized Constantine. He seems a righteous young man. It's incredible 21 years have passed. I remember how difficult it was to bring him to the world,"
he notes, making remembrance with some nostalgia in his gaze.
"I realized he seems to get along well with him. Is this part of the plan?"
"Believe me, Ambrose. They both finding affinity is just the way it was revealed to us it would happen. This is how it's supposed to be. The key that will unlock our future has been finally forged."
"What about the killing and the Red Book? Any word on Wilhelm?"
he questions with some concern. "We don't know anything about Wilhelm. We assume he's dead like the others, but now we have found the whereabouts of this young man, we can finally know if he is the one who is behind all this hunt. All this bloodshed will not be in vain." Continues in 6th installment.
It's